Arizona Theater Matters presents an audio play by Jeanmarie Simpson. Music by Diana Kimetto. Great Divide, a Clara Barton story, with the voices of Angelica Linares as Clara and Ray Williams, narrator. Diana Kimetto, titles announcer. Sign language by Hands in Harmony. Ololade Adekanmi, director. Sign language performers: Boluwatife Makanjuola as Clara, Kamaldeen Awal, narrator. Post-production assistant, Sydney Wolf. Production manager, Kevin Tai. Directed by Diana Kimetto. Bedrock.
I have this recurring dream. Had it all my life. A girl lives by a river, an American river. It runs wild and wide. Some years it carries away whole trees, deer, houses, families. Her mother said not to look, but she did. On a map, the river stretches east to west, Atlantic to Pacific, clean as a blade. From sea to shining sea.
The girl lives in the divide. The flood line's the only border that ever mattered in her yard. Her family doesn't talk about sides. They talk about weather, wood rot, the cost of chickens. Sometimes they mention names that don't get birthdays anymore. The river left things: a spoon, a button, a bone. She kept them, named them. She keeps them in a basket that lives under the porch, behind the tools and the boards no one nailed back down. She checks it sometimes in the dark, just to make sure nothing's crawled out. Names each object. Samuel, the one who lied. Benjamin, secrets. The river didn't care which way the flags flew. She watched it take the same corner of the fence 3 years in a row. No one fixed it after the second. There used to be a tree by the bend with names carved into it. First names, last initials, a crooked heart. The bark came off in one long sheet after a hard rain. Nobody carved anything after that. Last week, she stood by the basket and thought she heard it shift. Just once, soft, like something breathing into fabric. She left it there. Whatever it was, it could wait.
I heard it before I saw it. Not a branch or a rock or anything I recognized. Too heavy. Thud, like something alive hit the ground and didn't bounce. That kind of sound sticks to your ribs. David was up on the barn roof. Again, yelling, "Watch this!" like he was starring in his own play. The idiot. Always did that. Always needed an audience. And then, nothing. Like time skipped over him. I ran. Didn't think, didn't care. Grass nicked up my legs, lilacs pulled at my hair. I didn't stop. He was on the ground, all wrong. Bent the way you never want to see someone bent. His legs were a mess. One hand twitched, slow, creepy, like his body didn't get the message yet. His face, though, blood behind his ear, steady like it had somewhere better to be. Forehead split open. You could see bone. The skin looked like something took a bite and got bored halfway. His eyes were huge, mouth hanging open like it couldn't decide what to do. He was breathing, sort of. All off-tempo, like a broken metronome. "David?" I said. Sounded stupid. Thin. I touched his temple. Warm. Slick. His hair was full of dirt and blood. He was still there, just barely. Then Ma screamed. Pa shouted. They didn't see me yet. I was crouched next to him, skinny arms around his wreck of a body. Told him, "You're all right." I lied. Pa lifted him. David groaned. His head just flopped. I followed because what else do you do? Ma cleared the kitchen table like a storm. Didn't care what she broke. Pa put him down. She started barking orders. Stephen got water. Sarah grabbed vinegar. I stood there like a piece of furniture with a lamp in my hand. Pa tried cleaning the wound, swore under his breath. Ma sliced his shirt open. It was soaked through. She checked his eyes. One pupil was too big. Didn't say it out loud. Just clenched her jaw. I found cloth, thread, whatever I could. I sat by his head, wiped his mouth. Blood looked thicker now, darker. Ma stitched the cut. Her hands shook. The whole place smelled like blood and vinegar and something. I don't even know. Like the end of something. I mashed herbs, stirred broth that tasted like dirt. His hand twitched against mine. Cold, but still hanging around. Next morning he muttered something. Might have been my name. Might have been nonsense. I crushed laudanum into sugar, slipped it in his mouth like candy, counted his breaths, like maybe I could keep him breathing just by counting. Ma forgot to eat. I handed her bread. We didn't talk about it. Day 5, his eyes started following me. Day 7, he said, "Hey." I said, "You're safe." He said, "It hurts." I said, "I know." Later, I burned the rags, watched till they were nothing but ash. I guess that's when it started, me being a nurse, or whatever you want to call it. I cooled fevers, kept time like a damn cuckoo clock no one asked for. They didn't mean to hand me a war, but they did. No bugles, no uniforms, just hands that never stopped moving. They built a world that didn't need me, unless I made biscuits or babies. But I learned what broken looks like, what dying looks like, and what it takes to haul someone back from it. I moved because he couldn't. Call it a sick bed if that helps you sleep. I call it my first campaign. First promise I made was to a busted-up boy with straw in his hair, on American dirt. No flag, no glory. The whole place smelled like raw meat left in a shed.
Grid plane.
The river gave her a tooth once, flat, yellow, too smooth to be new. She picked it out of the mud with 2 fingers and turned it in the light. Could have been a dog, could have been a man. She named it Secrets and put it in the basket. Her stomach turned when she touched it, but she didn't drop it. Just wiped her hand on the back of her dress and checked the bank for more. It had rained the night before. Not hard, but steady, enough to loosen things. Her mother wept when she saw the bone. Didn't say whose it might be. Just stood in the doorway, arms hanging, eyes not blinking. Then turned and walked back inside. After that, she didn't ask about the basket again. The red cloth was already stained. The flowers bled months ago. Now they looked like fingerprints. She kept the tooth wrapped tight, nested between the button and the spoon. They made a sound when they knocked together. Dry, thin, like a jar of pennies. That week, the basket started to feel lighter. Things went missing. Nothing big, just small shifts. The green button was gone. So was the string she used to bind the spoon. She didn't ask where they'd gone. Maybe the river wasn't done with them. One night she found the cloth folded wrong. Not how she left it, not how it ever was. Nothing else looked touched, but she put the tooth in the very center before closing it again. Then pushed it deeper under the porch, past the boards no one stepped on. She dreamed that night. Not a nightmare, just strange. A man with no arm holding a blank letter, A girl with mud on her face. A sound like fabric being torn. She woke up with her hand clenched. Her jaw ached like she'd bitten something she didn't remember. The next morning, the river was quiet. Too quiet. The kind of silence that waits. She stood at the bank and watched the current pretend not to move. It didn't offer anything. Not even weeds. No bones. No shine. Just still water and a line of insects skating the surface. She stood there long enough that her legs went numb. The basket was behind her, back at the house, still under the porch. She didn't check it that day. She didn't want to know what was still inside, or what wasn't.
I was 15 when I stood up in front of a classroom. Nobody told me to. Nobody paid me. I just walked in and pretended I was in charge. Ledger under one arm, chalk in my skirt pocket. Honestly, my palms were sweating and my heart was in my throat. There were boys a head taller than me calling me ma'am. I felt like a fraud. It wasn't much. Drafty room, half-broken chairs, kids staring like I'd dropped in from the moon. But they didn't leave, so I didn't either. That's how it started. Later, New Jersey, I built a school, a real one, Bordentown. First free school in the area. No fees, no permission slips. If you could walk, you could learn. It caught on fast. Too fast. Kids came in barefoot and bug-eyed. I told jokes while teaching fractions. You'd be surprised what a laugh will do for a kid who hasn't eaten since Sunday. Once it was a resounding success, they sent Mr. Warner. Chain watch, stiff collars, probably recited grammar rules in his sleep. They called it a promotion, said he'd bring stature. He got the desk under the flag. I got the one with the draft. He taught discipline. I taught long division and how not to cry when your pencil breaks. Guess who got promoted? I showed him where the chalk was, didn't show him where I kept the biscuits. He suspended a boy for chewing tobacco. That boy hadn't eaten in 2 days. I slipped cornbread into his coat while he wasn't looking. Mr. Warner didn't notice, too busy with his rules. Posture drills, recitations, feminine penmanship. He wasn't cruel, just the kind of man who ironed his socks. I stayed 6 weeks. Wrote names down, mended mittens, pulled splinters out of fingers that had never held a pencil right. One morning, the stove was cold. Firewood bin was empty. He said, "That's the janitor's job." I said, "He quit 2 days ago." He shrugged, so I got the wood, lit the fire myself, didn't take off my gloves. That afternoon, I went home, sat on the edge of the bed. Just sat. It wasn't rage, wasn't sadness either. It was math. One purpose, subtracted from one place. They called it order. I called it sweeping me into the corner. They gave the front of the room to a man. Because if there's one thing that strikes terror in the hearts of children, it's a receding hairline and a Latin conjugation. They can take the room. They can't take the bloody knuckles. I'll find another bench, another kid the world forgot. And when the wound comes, and it always does, they'll look around for someone who knows where the bandages are. And I'll already be there.
Estuary.
She found it caught in a tree branch halfway down the bank, pale and stiff from sun. Not fluttering, hanging. At first, she thought it was a sheet, then a dress. Then she got close and saw the waist ties and the rust-colored streaks. It was her apron, the one with the pocket she'd torn reaching for a stove handle too fast. The one she'd lost last year in the spring flood. Her mother said it had probably sunk, Now here it was, bone dry, half folded, clinging to bark like it belonged there. She pulled it down and shook the leaves off. The fabric was still strong. The stains hadn't faded. Her palm fit over one perfectly. She could feel the indent of her own grip in the cloth, like she'd just held it. She tied it around her waist and walked the edge of the yard, the hem brushing against her shins. Her mother saw it and went still, didn't speak, just turned and lit the stove. That night she dreamed about sewing, but the needle was too long and the thread wouldn't catch. She pulled and pulled, but the stitches unraveled as fast as she made them. Someone was watching, not speaking, watching. She woke up with thread tangled around her wrist. The apron went under the bed, folded tight. When she touched it again 2 days later, it smelled like vinegar and smoke. There were new handprints, smaller ones, like a child had handled it. She didn't ask who. There was no one to ask. She just stared at it, then slid it deeper under the bed, under the box with the winter socks, under everything. The river hadn't given her anything else since the apron, but it hadn't taken anything either. That made her nervous. It felt like the pause before thunder, the second where you know it's coming, but can't tell from where. One morning the basket felt heavier. She opened it. Everything was still there, but nothing looked the same.
The windows shook before the sound hit. Some man yelled, "Baltimore!" Nobody answered. We all knew what that meant, and none of us wanted to say it out loud. I laced my boots wrong, didn't fix them, just grabbed the salve, some linen, and started tearing up my petticoat before I hit the street. By noon, those strips were soaked through, and still not enough. Everything turned into something else. The streets were a mess, women asking where their boys were, men afraid to sign up and afraid not to. Kids didn't ask anything, just stood there, staring. The station was soup, thick, wet air sitting on your chest like a drunk uncle. August was always hideous outside, but today the smoke was like ink on your skin. I asked, "Is the train late?" Some man said, "No, it's here." Didn't even look at me. Then the doors opened and they came out. Torn sleeves, no boots, bandages held together with wire. One kid had a belt wrapped around his thigh to stop the bleeding. Blood all down the steps, some dried, some still dripping. I knew those boys, Charles, Samuel, Benjamin. Charles tried to memorize counties. Samuel once hid a turtle in my desk. Benjamin wanted to lead an orchestra someday. They didn't cry, didn't ask for help, just looked at me with relief in their eyes. The Capitol was behind me, pretending to be in charge. But this was a disaster, and nobody knew what they were doing. No nurses, no surgeons, no rules. Just me and whatever I do to bring relief. Poured vinegar on it, pressed down hard, then harder. The blood slowed. The screaming didn't. Somebody asked, "What are you doing?" I said, "Whatever I can." Samuel said his brother was missing. Benjamin left his hand in Baltimore. I passed a cup of water around the line. It never came back. Then they started singing, off-key, loud, like it might keep them awake. A chaplain stood next to me, praying. He said, "Mercy." I said, "Scissors." He handed me a pocket knife. I cut a boot off a mangled foot. The chaplain threw up on my skirt. Someone said, "Miss Barton?" I turned. It was a boy I almost remembered. "You gave me a book once," he said. "What was it?" "I don't remember." "That's all right." He died an hour later. I sat on a crate, breathed through a rag that smelled like old apples, wiped most of the blood off my hands. Not all. Another train pulled in. More boys. Fewer names I recognized. I filled a tin from a horse trough. The horse nodded. I nodded back. That was the agreement. I smelled like the underside of a dead sow, and still some fool tried to flirt. I waved him off and heard two men arguing about how much chicory goes in the pot. Americans will cross a continent, fight a war, and then argue for 3 hours about how to brew coffee. I thought about chalk dust, that kid who drew battle flags in his copybook. He might have already come through. Might be next. I don't know how to fight, but I know how to stay, how to hold pressure, how to say yes when everything says no. I walked home with blood on my sleeves, my hem, my hands, lit a candle. It sputtered. I wrote letters to the quartermaster, the colonel, anyone with a uniform and a mailbox. I asked for towels, thread, gauze, the sour tang of mercy. I didn't ask for permission. If I couldn't fight, then I'd bleed. With them, beside them, until every last name was counted, and the cloth ran out. This was the capital of the Union, and nobody was ready.
Fault.
The sun doesn't rise. It burns its brutal way over torn coats, open mouths, and flies claiming the dead. By mid-morning, the cornfield's nothing but stumps. The air smells like gunpowder and blood. Every scream hits like a brick to the chest. They call it Antietam, or Sharpsburg, or hell, if they're telling the truth. By noon, I've counted 3,000 Union boys dead. I'm carrying a basin in each hand. Water's warm and thick, like it's seen too much. Every mouth I pass asks, "Am I dying?" I don't answer. They already know. One boy, 16 maybe, gut wound, keeps calling me ma'am. I press down, tear his jacket open, stuff the last clean bit of lint I've got into the hole. He says his name's Elias, from Ohio, likes fishing. I say, "You'll fish again." He says, "Promise?" The bullet tore through my sleeve, went in one of his shoulders and out the other. Killed him instantly. His eyes stay open, his mouth too. His hand slips out of mine. I sit there 10 seconds, maybe more. Then I close his eyes. Take the lint back. Use it on the next boy. Later, someone asks if I'm hit. I show them the hole. They say, "That was close." That night, I fold the dress and put it in the trunk. Never mend the hole. I sleep 3 hours on a stretcher meant for corpses. Then I write. Inventory. 2 crates of boiled lint, 4 dozen tourniquets, no chloroform, 3 barrels of blackstrap for the boys who can't sleep. Asked for boots. They sent 12 pairs, all size 8. Half the men didn't even have feet. So I ask names. I write them down. They didn't send ink. I use molasses. I struggled to focus. Felt like my brain was peeling at the edges. Thought maybe I was going mad. He had a case, gold, etched, for 1 cigar. Said it was a gift. I knew it was from his wife. He always told the truth. Always signed his letters with care. Never promised more than he could give. Never called me his. That part I made up. He wrote, "Your letters come like a breath of peace to my weary spirit. If I dared write you what is in my heart, I would never finish the page. You speak so tenderly of my burdens." I told myself he loved me. Told no one else. Just repeated the words in the dark like scripture. He signed every letter, "Yours always." which I took to mean love. Turns out it meant nothing, but hey, solid penmanship. They ask why I never married. I tell them, the work came first. Biggest pile of horse manure I ever said. I was the one who lied. I write requests, reports, and this. My life was spared. I will spend it serving those who weren't. I go back before dawn, walk the rows. Some bodies are still warm, some mouths still open, like they were mid-sentence when it happened. I whisper names. If I don't know them, I make one up. I left something on the spot. A thread, a coin, whatever I had. I don't promise survival. I promise to witness. I can't bring them home, but I can say they mattered.
It wasn't a gift this time. It was a warning. She saw it glinting in the mud near the fence post, one edge sticking out like a blade, the rest buried. She thought maybe it was glass from the shed window, but when she pried it loose, it was thicker, heavier, cold. A mirror, cracked straight down the center. No frame, no backing. Her face showed up in pieces. The crack ran through her mouth. Behind it, the face was older. The eyes were hollow. Not dead, just emptied out. She wrapped it in the rag from the apron, folded tight. Tucked it in the basket without naming it. That night she didn't sleep, not for any reason she could name. Just lay there with her eyes open and the covers wrong and the air wrong. When she finally stood up to get water, she found the mirror on the kitchen floor, still wrapped, but out in the open. Her mother had walked right past it and hadn't seen it. She watched her step over it twice. She put it back in the basket. The next morning it was in the sink. Her brother saw it then. He didn't say a word, just picked it up, turned it once in the light, and walked it back to the porch. She watched from the window. He placed it down gently, like it was breakable, like it wasn't already broken. Then he wiped his hands on his pants and went back to stacking firewood. She didn't ask what he saw. That night, nobody spoke at dinner. She started seeing reflections in other places. Not faces, not hers, just pieces. An eye in the pot lid, a mouth in the edge of the bucket, a hand in the spoon bowl, reaching out instead of in. She didn't tell anyone. She just stopped looking at shiny things. The river rose slightly, nothing dramatic, just enough to cover the stepping stones. It didn't bring anything that week, but it did take the bucket. She found it 3 days later on the porch, dry, full of ash.
Root line.
The uniforms changed. The blood didn't. That's the first thing I noticed. Blue, gray. Didn't matter. Skin splits the same way no matter what color the wool is. One Union kid lost his foot, screamed for his mother. A Confederate kid took one to the throat, couldn't make a sound. Both grabbed my hand like it was the last thing keeping them here. A surgeon looked at me and said, "Why waste thread on the enemy?" I told him, the thread doesn't give a damn what side he's on. Some major warned me they might be spies, said they could slit my throat while I slept. I said, "Good, let 'em try." And I meant it. I patched up this one Georgian, bullet in his thigh. He cried, told me thank you, like it cost him something. I fed him with a spoon, wiped his chin like he was 5. He said I reminded him of someone. I said, "Your mother?" He said, "No, my conscience." That shut me right up. They've called me a Yankee witch. I just wring out the rag, pass the basin. Doesn't matter. I'm not there to be liked. I'm there so they don't die screaming. There was this Union guy, loud, angry, bitter, spitting hate while I wrapped his shoulder with a strip of red. Might have been a bandage, might have been a flag. Doesn't matter, it held. I gave water to the Confederate next to him. The Union boy spat at me. Later, he asked me to check his stitches. Hate drains slower than blood, but it does drain. One surgeon told me I'd never be remembered, said I'd thrown away my place by helping the other side. I said, that's not why I'm here. They branded me Angel of the Battlefield. Cute. I boiled rags and got shot at. Another man called me a traitor. I asked him where it hurt. He didn't answer. 2 hours later, he passed out. I saved his leg. A boy from Georgia gave me a pebble from some creek near his house. Said, send it to my sister if I die. He didn't. I kept it. One night I woke up under a blanket. Still don't know who put it there. Could have been blue. Could have been gray. Doesn't matter. I'm sure they were American. The dead don't ask what side you were on. They just stop breathing. The living, sometimes, learn, one wound at a time. I wrote a letter for a boy who couldn't hold a pen. He called me, that Yankee lady what saved my sorry hide. Signed it with an X. I sealed it. Told him it'd get there. Might have been lying, but he smiled. I serve people. That started meaning something. They stopped asking, why are you here? Started asking, where? Where's the basin? Where's the thread? Where's the girl who doesn't flinch? That's me. And if I ever end up bleeding in the dirt, I hope nobody checks the color of my damn coat before they decide to help. I didn't come to heal a side. I came to find out what a nation feels like when it chooses mercy.
She didn't find it near the house. She found it in a snarl of roots behind the shed, the place with the leaning boards and the moss that never dried. The cloth wasn't hers. Dark, maybe once blue, stiff with mud. Something had tried to bury it or forget it, and the river had pulled it back. She tugged it free. It made a sound when it let go. Not loud, just final. She unwrapped it slow. Inside was a bone, long, smooth at one end, the other, broken sharp, tied with string like someone wanted it held together. She didn't guess whose. She didn't name it. Not this time. She folded the cloth again and walked it to the place behind the shed where she never stepped. Laid it down between the stones and backed away. She told no one, but it stayed with her. In the wind under the porch. In her brother's sleep talk, mumbling through clenched teeth. In her mother's cough. Once, she almost said something. The shape of the bone came into her mouth like a word. She bit her tongue hard enough to bleed. It tasted like copper and something like duty. That night, she dreamed of a man with no arm sitting in a chair holding a letter with no words. She tried to speak. The river answered, not with language, just noise. A scream that filled her chest and bent her backwards. She woke up gasping, hands clenched, ribs thudding like fists behind them. The bundle was still where she left it. Still wrapped, still waiting. Maybe the river doesn't want her to remember, only to carry. Just long enough for someone else to find it. Maybe that's what America is. Carrying until someone else remembers. 3 days later, she opened the basket again. The brass button was gone. Or maybe it was never there.
Obsidian.
I woke on the floor of a commandeered church, somewhere just past Antietam, in a pool of my own sweat. I had passed out beside a crate of boiled lint. My mouth was dry and my thighs were soaked. A dark stain spread between my legs, and my gut was still in knots. The pews were full of groaning men. The walls smelled like blood, and my fingers were crusted in someone else's skin. I sat up slowly as pain bloomed behind my eyes. My stomach turned over. I crawled behind the altar and emptied what little was left in my bowels, wiped myself with a shred of petticoat. There was no privacy here, no dignity, just the work. My back screamed, my jaw ached. I bled steadily, the cramps sharp and regular. It seemed my body was leaking from every direction, and my right hand wouldn't stop shaking. I pulled myself back onto my knees. Then my arms buckled. I just sat there behind that altar like another forgotten relic and heard a voice say, I can't do this. Then I realized it was mine. I squeezed my eyes shut, rubbed them with my knuckles, then pressed my palms flat to the floor, dug my nails into the grain. I knew what came next. I stood, shaking, sweating, bleeding. I wrapped another wound, stitched a boy's face back together, wrote 6 names in the margin of a prayer book, barked orders at 2 stunned orderlies who hadn't slept in days, ordered vinegar, always vinegar. God, how I hated vinegar. Gauze, clean water, and clean clothes, if there were any left on earth. I bled through 2 layers of cotton and kept moving. I smelled like rotting fruit. Then something in me just stopped. I couldn't move. I didn't give a damn about anything or anyone. I was done. My knees hit the floor so hard it rattled my teeth. I pressed the heels of my hands to my eyes until I saw stars. I threw the basin. It hit the wall, cracked clean in 2. Water spilled like a last breath. No one flinched. Everyone was too busy dying. I laughed, that awful kind of laugh, the one you choke on. My throat burned. My jaw locked. I wiped my nose with my sleeve like a child and said to no one and everyone, I can't do this anymore. You hear me? I looked up, ceiling black with soot. I imagined the rafters were watching. You want sacrifice? Fine. You want mercy? Pick someone else. You want me to keep stitching boys back together just so they can crawl to the next trench? I'm done. I've bled enough. I've buried enough. I've given everything, and I still smell like vinegar. Then I sat in it, in the stink and the sweat and the blood that wasn't even all mine. I sat there, head bowed, hands filthy, body spent. I didn't ask for strength, didn't pray for clarity, didn't beg for relief. I just sat there, stewing in my own juice. The sour stink of sweat, blood, and hopelessness thick around me. I heard footsteps, lifted my head. A boy was standing a few feet away, blood streaked down his sleeve, lips cracked, eyes too wide for someone that young, 12, maybe less. He asked, "Is there any more thread?" I looked down. My hands were still shaking, but I held a spool of black buttonhole thread. I handed it to him, watched him lower himself to the ground, slow, like his bones weren't sure they still belonged to him. He pulled a darning needle from somewhere, God knows where, and started trying to stitch a gash on the inside of his upper arm. Right-handed, of course. Awkward, clumsy, determined. He jabbed once, twice, then stopped. The needle slipped from his fingers. his whole body seized. And he sobbed. Not loud, not theatrical, just dry, rasping sounds, like his soul had been wrung out, and there was nothing left to give but that I couldn't watch. Even with my shaking right hand, I could do it. There was no vinegar, not a drop, but I found a jug of something, maybe whiskey, maybe communion wine. I didn't care. I poured it over his wound. He hissed, flinched, but didn't pull away. I took the needle from him, threaded it. "Hold still," I said. He nodded. I stitched him up. Slow, clean, crude. He clenched his jaw hard enough I thought he'd chip a tooth. Sweat poured from his hairline. Tears slipped down his neck. When I tied the last knot, I pressed my palm against the bandage and whispered, "That's done." He nodded again. Didn't speak. Just held his arm like it belonged to someone else. We sat there on the floor, and I don't remember when we got up or what happened after that. I just know that I realized that was my life and I was in it, and that was all there was to it. Maybe in the next life there'd be rosebuds and daisies, but this one was blood and guts and children trying to sew up their own arms.
It wasn't folded. That's what caught her first, just lying there, soft from damp, held down by a stone. No stamp, no envelope, no crease at all, like it had never been meant to travel. The paper shimmered slightly. Old water had dragged the ink down in thin, vertical streaks. It looked like crying. Most of the words were gone, but 3 remained, clinging to the fibers like they were afraid to disappear. Angel, August, stay. No name, no address, no sender. Just a kind of ache, left out in the open. She crouched beside it, fingers sliding under the page, lifted it slow, laid it flat across her knees. She read it like it was sacred, not because of what it said, but because it had made it this far, survived enough rain to be found at all. In her mind, the writer was a boy, young, barely past school, ink mixed with blood, hands shaking, holding the paper to his chest like it could stop the wound. She didn't know why that image came. It just did. Not a vision, not memory, just something true enough to arrive. Angel, August, stay. She whispered the words again, and something in her tightened. Not fear, not grief, just pressure, like her chest was holding a breath it couldn't let out. She folded the letter corner to corner. No rush, no ceremony, just 2 creases. Then she stood, found a split in the roots of the tree nearby, and tucked it there, between the stones at the base. Not a grave, a waiting post, for someone still fighting their way home. That night, she heard whispering outside her window. Not voices exactly, just rhythm, like a book being read somewhere far away. Pages turning, words too quiet to name. She didn't open her eyes. In the morning, the river was soft again. The air smelled like turned earth. The stones were still there. She didn't check the letter.
Stratum.
When the guns stop, it doesn't sound like peace. It sounds like something's missing, like a hole where a name used to be. The papers scream victory. The streets throw parades, but nobody tells the mothers where the bodies are. I rented a room above a tavern, 1 desk, 2 chairs. Ink was already dry in the pot when I got there. I hung a sign in the window. Office of Missing Soldiers. That's it. No hours, no promises. Then the letters started coming, like rain. A boy named Emery never came home. A man named Thomas crossed the Rappahannock and vanished. A father wrote, "Burned or buried." A sister sent a lock of hair and asked, "Did anyone hold his hand?" Most of the letters were barely spelled. Didn't matter. I read every single one. I started a ledger, then another, then 12. Built drawers, filled them with names. When my fingers gave out, I hired clerks. Quiet men, good men. They sorted, filed, listened. We didn't get paid. No funding. Just 41,668 letters. I answered everyone, even when the answer was, "We don't know." Or, "We found a grave, but not a name." Or, "We have no record of his final moments." I didn't soften it. Didn't write poetry. I wrote facts. Corporal William Davis, Andersonville, grave 718, Private Robert Fields, Cold Harbor, unmarked trench. I wrote each one like it counted, because it did. I carry names no one says anymore. Names that don't make parades or textbooks. Names history left in the dirt. I picked them up. Sometimes the families showed up. Photos, rings, bits of handwriting. Asked, "Is this enough?" I always said yes. I wrote surgeons, chaplains, gravediggers who couldn't remember their own names. I tracked boots, buttons, maps printed in ink that bled when it rained. Once I ID'd a boy by the way his foot turned out. His mother said he always walked funny. Her face broke like dawn. 22,000 men. That's how many I found. Not with miracles, with math, with nights where I forgot I existed. A general asked me once, "You're still doing that?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Why?" I said, "Because they're still missing." A widow hugged me so hard I couldn't breathe, said, "Now I know," then left. That's what they want. Not comfort, not healing, just knowing, just to stop imagining, to bury something, even if it's just in their heads. I'm not looking for a medal. The country handed me scraps and said, "Make do." So I turned them into my own museum, my own damn monument. You don't build a country by forgetting the fallen. You build it by naming them, and 44,000 are still out there, somewhere. I opened the doors, ran it like a ledger, a chapel, a morgue. Letters came by the thousands. Mothers, sisters, wives, asking if anyone had seen their dead. And finally, I stopped looking. I left them unhallowed, somewhere out there, bones with no name. I walked away. I started and never finished a monument of names. I abandoned the rest.
It was the worst storm anyone had ever lived. The girl stood barefoot in the yard, holding the basket to her chest. Water pushed in from all directions, thick as syrup and faster than breath. It ripped the porch from its hinges, buried the chickens, swallowed the fence. Her brother's name was in her throat, but never made it out. Her mother disappeared behind the kitchen window like a candle getting snuffed. The water reached her hips, then her chest. She held the basket higher. When it closed over her mouth, she let go. Later, she woke up face down in muck, tangled in broken branches and a strip of someone's curtain. The basket was still there, somehow, pressed against her ribs like it had been fused to her. Her legs were trembling, her gut twisted with cramps. She curled tighter around the basket and whispered, "Please, don't leave."
Salt pan.
For days she walks the banks. The river's gone still in a way that still moves. The water flows, but it doesn't leave anything behind. No buttons, no bones, no cloth. Just light on the surface and the faint smell of algae. She starts to wonder if it's ignoring her, or if she's just stopped seeing what's always been there. She can't tell the difference anymore. The basket stays behind the woodpile, untouched, damp, edges soft from rot. She doesn't open it. She's afraid the pieces inside might look different, or worse, exactly the same. Her mother asks if she's sick. She shakes her head. Her mother never asks again. At night, the wind changes. It doesn't rattle the shutters. It doesn't howl. It whispers. Not in words, just shapes that want to be words. Lift, mend, keep going. She hears them, but doesn't move. One night she wakes to footsteps outside her window. Slow, pacing. She looks. Nothing there, but the ground is wet, and it hasn't rained. She stops sleeping after that. Or if she does, she doesn't dream. Just flashes, flames, boots, a bucket too hot to touch. Faces with the eyes missing. Cloth catching fire before she can pull it free. A name whispered once, then gone. She forgets the names. She forgets what mercy felt like in her hands. She hums now. A tune her mouth remembers, but her name doesn't. One morning, she walks to the river again. Not for anything, not to take, just to be near it. She stands at the edge, breath shallow. The water moves without noticing her. "Please," she says. Nothing answers. She says it again, quieter this time. "Please." A breeze brushes past her legs. Light, dry. That is all.
Europe damn near killed me, but it showed me what came next. I went to rest. That was the plan, and walked straight into another kind of war. Floods in Germany, famine in France, hospitals full to the walls, no battlefield, just people falling apart. Then I saw it. White field, Red Cross, plain, loud. Didn't pick sides. I said, "What's that?" They said, "It's how we know who helps." Geneva, they told me. A treaty, an idea, care without allegiance. I said, "Why don't we have this in America?" They shrugged, so I brought it back. Pamphlets, proposals, receipts from every disaster no one wanted to talk about. Chicago, Peshtigo, yellow fever choking New Orleans. I sat across from President Hayes. He listened. Real polite, said, "We're not at war." I said, "We're always 5 minutes from it." He didn't argue, didn't move either. Then came President Arthur. Liked him better. I said, "Disasters don't wear uniforms. I want federal decency." He signed, eventually. Probably just wanted me out of his office. I founded the American Red Cross at 59. No husband, no children, no regrets, except maybe not investing in cotton futures. We started with fires, then floods, then hurricanes, then war, again. Always war. Always too late to stop it. Never too late to show up. If peace is a promise, I kept the receipt. I wrote the mission myself, picked the paper, ironed the dress, didn't give speeches, walked in with maps, manifests, notes scribbled on the backs of train schedules. I limped into rooms with a cane and a list. They saw an old woman. I saw the numbers. Some congressman called it a noble idea. I called it a functioning one. We answered dam breaks, cyclones, epidemics. We brought flour, soap, onion poultices, and quinine. They asked how we chose sides. I said, "We didn't." They asked if we flew a flag. I said, "Only one." The Red Cross didn't care who started the fire, just asked who was still inside. They stopped calling me nurse, started calling me president. It fit. I traveled with crates of onions and soap, slept in tents, wrote proposals in half-light with a cracked stub of a pencil. Didn't chase legacy, chased whoever needed something. Somebody asked me once if I ever got tired. I said, "Tired of what?" Suffering didn't sleep, so I didn't either. There was always another fever, another flood, another name, and as long as I could stand, I went. Because I said I would. The board didn't like that. Said I was erratic, too emotional, too expensive. I showed them receipts. I showed them names. They nodded. Then they voted me out. I wasn't surprised. I was tired. So damn tired.
Apoptosis.
She started finding things again. A rope showed up in her lap while she was peeling bark off a stump. Coiled, tight, a knot too clean to be random. She set it aside. In the morning, the rope was inside her shoe. Waiting. The basket felt lighter that day. The first spoon was gone. The one with the bent neck and the brown stain. She reached under the rag to make sure. Nothing. That night, she found her own teeth in the basket. All of them. Tiny, perfect, lined up in a threadbare strip of cloth. She counted them twice, held her breath, didn't touch them again. After that, nothing stayed where she left it. The mirror appeared in the sink. The button ended up under her pillow. Her brother saw it one morning. Didn't say a word. Just picked it up, wiped it once on his shirt, and placed it back under the porch. No questions. She started drawing in the dirt. Circles, boxes, signs she didn't recognize. Her hand moved on its own. No thought, no choice. She tried to wipe them away, but they came back different. A bandage showed up on her wrist one night, wrapped too tight to remove. The knot didn't have an end. It pulsed when she touched it. She left it alone. She tried to burn one of the buttons. Just one. It split down the middle, not melted. Split. She buried both halves beneath the shed. Didn't mark the spot. That night she whispered to the wind, the basket, the ground. She wasn't sure who. Don't give me anything else. I'm full. The river didn't answer. It just breathed. In the morning, 2 shoes sat at the edge of the path. Not hers, not her size. Damp, upright, waiting. She didn't touch them. She waited. The sun didn't.
They said, "You've done enough." I said, "Tell that to the storm." They said, "Let someone else lead." I said, "Show me the someone." In September of 1900, the sea rose over Galveston, Texas, and then it vanished. 8,000 people were dead. There weren't enough names, and the warnings came too late for all of them. I packed my bag with bandages, boots, record books, a comb, and a potato shaped like Robert E. Lee. Probably an omen. I was 78. My knees sounded like 2 rocks in a sack. I didn't talk about it. I was too busy ordering young people to carry things. The Red Cross showed up. We brought flour, rice, soap, shovels, vinegar. No speeches. Galveston smelled like rotting cabbage, salt, and fire. The streets were quiet, empty. We dug. We fed. We held people who weren't sure they were still people. We listened. One woman hadn't blinked in an hour. I touched her hand. She whispered, "I need to believe I'm alive." I told her, "I see the life in your eyes." Some man asked if I was somebody's grandmother. I said everyone's. He didn't laugh. A girl washed up with nothing but a ribbon in her hair. The flood took the rest. Her mother recognized the ribbon. I found a child beneath a collapsed door frame. Her face was gone. There was nothing left but lace and 5 tiny finger bones, tied in a clean handkerchief, like someone meant to come back for her. I held them. For the first time, I didn't pray. I inventory everything, even grief, even ghosts. I didn't write her name. I didn't have it. Still, I put the bones in a basket lined with the same lace and folded it carefully. The land was a grid of grief. Only Americans would build a town in a swamp, call it Liberty, and then wonder why the basement keeps flooding. People ask why I never had children. I say I buried too many. What I don't say is that sometimes when I sleep, I still feel that handkerchief inside my coat. They asked how long I'd stay. I said, until the work's done. I couldn't walk away from a mess. Once I didn't brush my teeth for 3 weeks. My breath could have repelled a cavalry charge at 20 paces. I finally washed my hair after finding a mouse nesting in it. We negotiated a peaceful surrender. He took the pantry. I kept the scalp. A kid told me I was too old for this. I told him, my knees agree. Then I handed him a shovel and told him to keep up. We raised tents faster than the army. We buried faster than the churches. We fed people before the politicians knew what hit them. When they finally arrived and made speeches, we called it Thursday. Someone handed me a chair. I nodded and sat. Sometimes I worked sitting down. I gave instructions, logistics, rations, body counts, while chewing something stale and sharp. Might have been hardtack. Might have been my last nerve. I felt the crack in my tooth, spatted into my glove. It hurt, so I kept it. I kept giving orders. I kept looking like someone people should follow, but I couldn't stop worrying the broken piece with my tongue. We brought back walls, not strong ones, just enough to keep out the rain. We counted the living. We buried the dead. We wrote letters. We swept death off the floors.
She doesn't open the basket anymore. What's in it doesn't need naming. It's been carried long enough.
I've had this recurring dream all my life. A girl by a river. The river's called America. And so is the girl. One turns into the other, then back again. Beautiful, broken things. Both of them. Always trying to make sense. America, America. God shed his grace and left the rest to us.
She sits in the place behind the shed and remembers, lifting someone heavier than herself and not letting go, being told no and going anyway, and then stops remembering herself.
I wasn't a nurse, not exactly. I was a woman with a sewing kit and an unreasonable sense of responsibility. I carried a ledger, rags, didn't ask who started the fire, asked who was still inside. They tried to move me, replace me, wait me out. I stayed. Because the work stayed. I never called it glory. It was life. It was letters, lists, scraps, grit, something to hold pressure with. When they retreated, I advanced. With whatever I had left in my damn hands, a stitch between silence and survival. I wasn't brave. I just didn't stop. That's the secret. We stitched heads and made blackberry aspic at the same time. That's America, sore and sweet. They said I made history. I said I kept count. They called me a legend. They gave me a medal once. I used it to level a table. You want to know what the heart of this country really sounds like? It's a kid with no legs singing off-key, when the moon had climbed the mountain and the stars were shining too. Then I'd take my darling Nellie Gray, and we'd float down the river in my little red canoe, while my banjo sweetly I would play. I miss it though. Not the wars, the work. This awful, beautiful country trying to become itself. God shed his grace on thee, and all that.
After Clara, the floodgates opened. Americans didn't ask how, they asked where. Red Cross chapters sprung up, town halls, churches, back rooms with tin roofs and too many chairs, volunteers with flour on their aprons, teenagers with bandage kits, old men who'd seen one war, then two, then couldn't stop helping. They showed up with what they had: thread, bread, names in shirt pockets. By 1905, there were 200 chapters. By 1910, there were thousands. They didn't wait for orders. They became the order. Fires, floods, epidemics, war. They went. Not to wave flags, but to carry stretchers. Not for medals, but because someone had to. This is America too. Not just the dream, but the hands that hold it when it starts to fall apart.
I walked into disaster and someone followed. They picked up the list, kept it going. Not because I asked, but because they couldn't not. That's American.
She sits one more time behind the shed, and she remembers. She walks one last time to the water's edge. The boat is waiting, small, quiet. The kind only a child would believe could carry a life. She steps in without sound, without a glance behind. The basket stays ashore. The girl steps in. The boat rocks once. The basket stays. The river keeps going.
America, America, God shed his grace on thee, and crown thy good with people who serve. Please God, from sea to shining sea.
Written by Jeanmarie Simpson. Directed by Diana Cometto. Voices: Clara Barton, Angelica Linares. Narrator: Ray Williams. Titles announcer: Diana Cometto. Sign language performers: Clara Barton, Boluwatife Makanjuola. Narrator: Kamaldeen Awal. Video produced and directed by Ololade Adekanmi. Production manager: Kevin Tai. Post-production assistant: Sydney Wolf. A production of Arizona Theater Matters. Nothing about us without us. I'm Diana Cometto. Thank you for joining us.